Hello everyone and welcome back to Southeast Guitar Repair Academy. Today we're going to be talking about acoustic output jacks, or as we would say, in-pin jack as well, because it works as the in-pin to the instrument. It's very common for the install. It's very basic. There's nothing too crazy about it. Just got a regular hot in the ground. But this is an issue that you're going to see quite a bit. A couple things you need to know first, right offhand. Never, ever, ever install an output jack on a side sheet anywhere. Always run through the end block because it's got to have something solid to grip onto. If you have it on the side sheet, I'm just using this mandolin as an example. Acoustic guitar, bass, whatever it is. You put that cable in there. The second somebody steps on that, anything like that, it's going to rip a giant hole in the side sheet. So never install one on the side sheet. Same as the strap button. Never install a strap button on the side sheet. It'll cause major problems. You can do major damage to the instrument. So this is an issue that you guys are going to see over and over and over again. Mostly on just regular acoustic guitars. People get it all the time. They get their jack loose. They try to tighten this nut in on the outside. It's tightened all the way and it still wobbles back and forth. It's because the nut on the inside of the jack has actually come loose. I believe we touched base on these at one point in time in the middle of a different repair to a different type of instrument, but we're going to go ahead and show you guys exactly what to do to tackle this repair. So you'll see right here we have our cable. You can take any regular cable. You can grind this the shoulders of your jack of the cable itself down so that it's nice and slim. Put a couple pieces of tape around there, solder it back into place, whatever you need to do. Make sure everything's nice and solid and secure. You just don't want a big bulky cable like this getting in the way because you actually need to send this through the body. So these are super easy to make. Take an old cable, anything you got laying around, cut off a little bit of length so you actually have some room to work with. This is all you would really need, just a couple feet. But yeah, always have one of these on hand. Very helpful. But you absolutely have to have something like this for a repair, like something with some F-holes in it or something like that. Now, on a regular acoustic guitar, typically you can reach down through the sound hole. You can actually do all the work just by holding the back of the jack itself, stabilize it a little bit, and then do all the work you need to. In this case, we're actually going to be working through the F-hole. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to loosen this up. We're going to attach our cable to it. We're going to pull it out, and we're going to see exactly where that interior nut sits and find out exactly how much room we need to give ourselves to be able to secure everything into place. They do have the cap for their jack here. You'll see that sometimes if this has come loose and it's coming out, or the nut on the inside is actually threading towards the outside of the jack, and then they go and they tighten it back down. Now you don't have enough of this jack exposed, so for example we'll just say that is how they've tightened it back down. They go to put the cap back on and now they're not getting any output. It's because they can't get their cable to make a full contact on the inside of the jack itself. Now once again, I know we've already talked about these before in a different repair, but we're just going to focus on that today. So you can see the difference in the thickness. If you were to put this cap on, it's actually going to keep your cable from going all the way in and making the proper contacts that it needs to make down on the inside of that jack. So before you take this nut all the way off, go ahead and put your cable in. Make sure everything's held tight. Go ahead and loosen your nut up a little bit. And now you can see, I don't know if y'all can get close enough here, but you can actually see where the inside of the nut has worked its way in the opposite direction, and there's not enough actual material here to grip onto. So it's actually sitting pretty flush with the outside right there. So those two pieces are just the same depth. So you actually want this sleeve right here, this little collar, to actually be inset into the body a little bit further. So as you tighten that down, it pulls out just ever so slightly, and then you still have that nice distance and nice length right there on the end of your jack for your cable to make a proper contact on the inside. So we'll go ahead and pull this nut and washer off of here. We're going to feed the jack through the body and figure out which one of these F-holes we're going to be working it out through. We're going to come over through the treble side here, looks like. Another handy tool, I've talked about this one before, coat hanger. Keep this on hand, make a little hook out of it. Very helpful, very handy when it comes to working on hollow body stuff and working through F-holes. So right now all we're doing is, it's not a crazy repair, but it is something, like I said, you will see this quite a bit. I mean, we get these in here all the time. People don't have the correct tools to be able to work on it themselves, or they try to tighten it and then they don't understand why their instrument is not making a proper sound anymore. And that's exactly why, because they've tightened it incorrectly and is now causing problems for them. So now for this, we don't really have to come all the way out. I'm going to see where it sits and if we can work it out very carefully. There's a small hole, so we're just going to try to feed this through here. Very carefully pull this out, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about here. If I can get this to move for me. And this washer is caught right here. There we go. So what's happened now is, like I said, this little spot right here was actually sitting flush with the tailpiece. You actually want that inset into the body just a couple 30 seconds, right about there, so that as you actually tighten this down, it's going to push in a little bit. You're not going to get this to sit flush all the way, which is exactly what you want. You do not want it to sit fully flush with the tailpiece or the end block by any means. So what happened is this washer itself has come a little loose on the inside, which is exposing too much of the jack to the outside, which in turn you can't actually sandwich it into the end block. So normally you'd just be able to tighten your nuts in from the outside, solidify that on there, make it nice and solid, plug it in, everything's going to be functioning properly. It's not going to wiggle around on you, it's not going to move or anything like that. So it's super simple. On something like this, all you got to do is just buy yourself a little bit more room. Just give the nut itself a few more turns towards the outside, which in turn is actually going to sink the jack into the body just a little bit more. And send it back through. And let's see where everything sits here. So it is a little bit of a back and forth sometimes. Once you've done a few of them, you'll get a lot more comfortable with it and you'll know exactly what to look for. So now you can see we've actually bought ourselves quite a bit of room here. You can see that we're not flush with the edge anymore. That little lip on the jack itself is not actually flush with the tailpiece. It's inset into the body, exactly what we want. You want to double check with your cap. Set your cap up next to it. You want it to be almost completely flush with the end. If you give yourself maybe a 30-second, if this is in just a little bit, that's totally fine. As you tighten that, it's actually going to squish the wood in. It's going to sandwich it in a little bit more, and it's going to push that jack out exactly to where it needs to be. So literally just a couple turns of that nut, sinking the jack back down into the body, bringing it back out. Once we put the nut and the washer back on, tighten everything on, we should be able to get that cap on there, and everything should function exactly how it needs to. So it's a super simple repair, but like I said, you will come across this a lot. We get, I'd say maybe once a week, maybe somewhere in there, once every week and a half, we get one of these in here. And sometimes people just don't want to mess with it. Sometimes they've messed with it so much to the point that they've driven themselves mad. But if you know exactly how to approach it, it's very simple. Once again, brilliant design on the output jack on these. You have a little hole that goes straight through the jack itself. You can go ahead and pull your cable out at this point. I'm going to hold that jack in place through that hole with a little screwdriver. Take your let's see if we can get in here. This is a little trickier because we have these screws right here in the way. So just take your wrench, start tightening this down. And you really can put quite a bit of tension on these. It's not going to cause any damage. It's literally just a sleeve of metal. So you just want to be careful as you tighten this down. And that's nice and solid on there. We're going to double check with our cap just to see where everything sits. And use a pair of taped pliers. You don't want to scratch anything up. I just pulled my tape off a couple days ago. It does wear out. Just put some fresh tape on your pliers here. And we're going to tighten this cap down a little bit. We're going to plug it in. We're going to check and make sure that these electronics are functioning correctly. They hadn't mentioned anything about the electronics not working, but obviously if the jack isn't properly seated, then you might not get a proper contact with your cable. So just tape up your pliers, give it just a little turn. That looks nice and tight. We're in just a little bit here. You can see this is the edge of the jack there, and this is the edge of the cap. So a couple 30 seconds there. We'll double check with our cord. And I'm hearing nothing. Let's take our cap off real quick and make sure that it's not because our cable's not making proper contact on the inside of it. If that is the case, we're going to pull the jack back off and buy ourselves a little bit more room on those threads. Can you hear anything? Let's crank this amp up a little bit. There we go. There's a very quiet preamp. Let's put this cap back on and make sure that it's actually still going to function. Now we don't need to buy ourselves a little bit more room on these threads. Yep, sounds good. Once again, we're just going to snug this up with our taped pliers. You don't want these to slide, especially on something like this. With the blue finish on there. It's snugged up, cap snugged up, double check, make sure everything works, and everything functions properly. Like I said, it's not a very hard repair, but a lot of people have no idea how to go about doing this. It's super simple, it's very basic. You can make your own tools to do this. It's nothing too crazy. You are going to run into this quite a bit, especially if you have a highly trafficked shop, something like this, or anybody that's around a lot of bluegrass players, a lot of players in church. You're going to get a lot of acoustic players coming through, and especially when it's an instance where either an instrument's being passed around to a bunch of different players or using different straps, different playing styles and stuff like that, that in-pin jack is going to work loose over time, and now you know exactly how to go about repairing it. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any more questions, feel free to give us a holler, and we'll see you all on the next one.